What have we discussed till now? What are the points that we have covered? How many of you can recall? No one recalls what are the points that we covered in comparative Indian literatures. कुछ नहीं याद आ रहा है किसी को? All blank. What happened? Nobody remembers? What are the things that we have discussed?
Sir, I read second essay and I made few of the notes, not complete notes, but few of the notes, like the beginning introductory notes. So Amina Dev discusses on the fact that India is a diverse country and the literature here represents diversity. Also, there are like he focuses on two major Indian literature which are ancient, which consist of Sanskrit and Tamil, while rest of the literature are kind of old, like around 900 years old or something. He also questions the singularity and plurality of Indian literature, which I don't get completely. I didn't understood this point. So that's why I stuck over here. And he also says that the singularity of Indian literature point of view, like perspective, was a result of both colonial and post-colonial perspective. And Indian literature is one which is written in many languages, and that was the motto of Sahitya Academy. I'm not sure if I'm correct over here or not, but correct. And the perspective of singularity was opposed by many of the scholars, and they argued that a country where so many languages exist should be considered a country with literatures, like it should be made into a plurality rather than focus on the singular thing.
Correct.
So this is what I understood, but I'm still confused with this singular and plural concept over here. So could you please enlighten me with it?
Yes, yes. Anyone wants to explain whatever you have understood about the question that she has raised? Anybody wants to say something? I will definitely explain, but I want others to chip in as well. Who will explain her what you have understood regarding the question of singularity and plurality? Who will explain? Nisha, would you like to try?
Yes, sir. I'll try. I mean, whatever I do understand from it. Singularity of literature is an approach where we consider the whole Indian literature. So whatever that is considered to be the part of Indian literature as one literature. So that is when we say that it's, when we say that the whole Indian literature is one and there is no difference between one from the other. And plurality of literature is like, there are so many languages that are used in India. So India is a multilingual country. Every language has its own literature. Every state has its own literature, its own past and history. So it is different from each other. So in that case, people would say that why not consider Indian literature to be to be literatures with an S. So in that case, they would say that Indian literature is plural. There are multiple languages and multiple states and a different history, and the literature is different from one to the other, even though they are interconnected, but they are different in their own way. And so Sahitya Academy's motto was also discussed, where it says that Indian literature is I don't remember the motto, but I think it was something like Indian literature is one because there are multiple languages. And then there was this motto, there was this line that was given against this motto in the essay as well, which indicates that it is the opposite case, that Indian literature is Indian literature because there are multiple languages in which it is written. So, but then these two approaches were, denied by, not denied exactly, but they were, Amiya Dev uses another approach instead of these two approach, and that is where he talks about multi-log and the other approaches, the interlitterariness and all that. So this is what I understood from the binary approach.
Yes. So does that help, Sejal?
Yes, sir, it does. Also, talking about the motto of Sahitya Academy, it was that Indian literature is one, but it is written in many languages. That was the motto of Sahitya Academy. Also, sir, the motto, I don't know if motto changes or not, but is it still the same, or
It is still the same.
It is still. So basically, the difference between the singularity of the literature and plurality of the literature is, as it is written in various languages based on various cultures and their histories. Like, is it this difference which is focused in this essay?
Yes. And to consider Indian literature as one literature, like American literature or Australian or Canadian, right? Can you consider them as single literature? So American literature is one literature, right?
Yeah.
German literature is one literature. French literature is one literature. So should we think of Indian literature like that, one literature? Or should we think about it as literatures written in India? That is the question. That it is very diverse, and Gujarati literature is deeply different from Punjabi, is different from Malayalam, is different from Tamil, is different from Kannada and Marathi, and which is again different from Manipuri and Ahomia and Bengali. So what's your opinion? Can you consider India as one literature, like German, French, Japanese, American, or should you consider them as plural? What's your take on it, students? What's your
I guess it should be considered as plural, because obviously the Indian literature is written in various languages and it has different dialects. Like each language is evolved when it comes, like, generation to generation, decades to decades. The language is evolving and the culture is different. The culture depends. There's a difference between each culture. Even in terms of history as well. So I guess it is correct to consider it as a plural,
and
rather than.
Is your experience? Which examples do you have in mind, Sejal?
Sorry, sir, you're not audible. Could you please repeat?
Now, what examples do you have in mind when you say that we should consider it as plurality of languages and dialect? Which literatures are you aware of on basis of which you are saying that they should be very they should be considered as plurality?
Sir, I am not aware of any such sort of literature, but I'm just saying it when it comes to, let's just take fiction, right? So if we go back to the time, there was this thing called khadi boli. I don't know what exactly it is, but it is something which writers, prefer writing it. So I'm focusing, taking that into consideration. I'm saying that it should be considered because I'm not sure where I'm going, but this is what I have in mind. And honestly, I don't have any example as of now.
Okay. Dehini, anything that you want to say? What are you trying to add?
So, sir, I also believe that plurality is the one we should go for, but that also makes me question that India is not the only multilingual country or multicultural country. As we have discussed before, you have in England, you have Irish, you have Scots, you have a lot of different people.
No,
Right?
in England, we do not have Irish and
No, sorry. I don't remember it exactly. My
in
knowledge
Britain
is getting messed
or
up.
United Kingdom.
Sir, Britain. So my point is that India is not the only multicultural, multilingual country. So why not we consider plurality for everything? But why are we picking up only in India? I mean, or we could look at it as singularly as people all around the world have, or we could look at everything with plurality.
Right. So, if it is completely plural, does that mean there is no such thing like Indian literature? If it all Gujarati और पंजाबी का कुछ लेना देना नहीं है, तमिल और कन्नड़ा का भी कुछ लेना देना नहीं है, बंगाल और मराठी का कुछ लेना देना नहीं है. You get all diverse having their own literatures. There is no such thing like Indian literature. Can we say that?
I guess no, sir. We can say that Indian literature is it's like whole discipline. It's like a whole area, and Gujarati literature, Bengali literature, and everything are a part of Indian literature.
Okay. So what makes it the part of Indian literature, Gujarati or Bengali?
I don't know that.
Okay, think about it. Yes, Sohana says that unity in diversity. So what provides this unity? Sohan, कहाँ से आती है ये unity? The nation, the state, you mean nation state, Dehini? National boundaries, okay.
Yeah, so literature produced in India, maybe.
In literature produced in
India.
That means India as nation.
Yes, sir.
Are you thinking on national lines? Okay.
Yeah.
So do you agree with this that Indian literature can be delimited by national boundaries? Is it possible? Consider the case of Tamil, Bangla, Sindhi, and Punjabi, Maithili, right? Punjabi is spoken in India as well as in Pakistan. How many of you know that? Bangla is spoken in India as well as in Bangladesh. Tamil is spoken in India as well as in Tamil Nadu. Sindhi is spoken in India as well as in Sindh, that is Pakistan. And Maithili is spoken not just in India, but also in Nepal. So can you consider these literatures as our literatures? Dehini?
No, sir. No.
Why?
Because Nepalis or Bangladesh or Pakistani literature is their literature. It does not lie within the boundary of the country India.
Tagore is a poet who has written two national anthems, one for Bangladesh and one for India. Amar
Sir,
Sonar.
But then, sir, we will have to consider both of these things before the partition, the whole Indian subcontinent, and after the partition, the country India.
So, which means national boundaries are not fixed.
Yes, sir, they're changeable.
Right? So, nation is not an eternal construct. Can you say that? Eternal idea, eternal notion. It is something that keeps on changing. Before 1971, there was no nation called Bangladesh. Right? It was called East Pakistan. And there was this freedom struggle against Pakistan, which was assisted by Indians, and that's how we had Bangladesh as a nation. Before 1947, there was no such thing like Pakistan or even Israel. So nations come up in particular times of histories, right? Nation states. So can they be considered as correct way to delimit what is Indian literature? Dehini, can you think so?
I mean, I'm not sure if this is the correct way, but my point is that I don't see any other way. Or either you'll have to create one.
So is there any other way? Because for example, a lot of Vedic texts, right, were written in near Indus Valley, Sindhu Ghati. Part of Punjab that is now in Pakistan. A lot of Vedic texts, because that is where the Indo-Aryan speakers came and settled from Central Asia 2,500 or 3,000 years ago. So can you call Vedic texts as Indians?
But sir, if
These
we are
Vedic-
considering the definition, I mean, not, I would not say definition, but if we are considering both before the partition and after the partition, then yes, that would be considered as Indian.
But before the partition, there was no Pakistan. After the partition, there is Pakistan and India. So
then, sir, both the countries will consider that.
तो वैदिक लिटरेचर हमारा लिटरेचर मान सकते हैं आज?
I'm not sure मान सकते हैं या नहीं. I know मानते हैं.
Okay. So national boundaries are also tricky, right?
Yes, sir, indeed.
So then how will you think of, then what is Indian literature? What makes all these literatures Indian? Punjabi, Gujarati, Sindhi, Bangla, Tamil, वो सब Indian literature है, हाँ या ना? What would you say? Is Gujarati literature Indian literature? यार आप इतना टाइम लेते हो? How many of you are Gujarati speakers? एक, दो, तीन, चार, पाँच, छः, सात. तो मैं ये पूछ रहा हूँ गुजराती लिटरेचर इंडियन लिटरेचर है या नहीं है, ऐसा मैं पूछ रहा हूँ.
मे बी
यानी क्या होता है, हाँ या ना? मे बी कैसे होगा? यू डोंट नो गुजराती इज इंडियन और नॉट? हु इज सेइंग दिस मे बी?
सर
Who is saying maybe? Yeah, Preeti, what are you saying?
No, sir, I was just answering your question with a yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what makes it Indian then? What makes Gujarati literature Indian? One position says that literatures of all languages, Punjabi, Gujarati, Tamil, Bangla, put together can be seen as a unity called Indian literature. Another position says that they are so diverse from each other that you cannot have a single unity, and there would not be anything like Indian literature in singular. So these are the two positions, and which do you subscribe? And can you consider Gujarati literature as Indian? If yes, then on grounds of what?
Sir, Amiya Dev put up the another position, right? Like interliterariness.
Yes. So what is that? That is how he is going to define what is Indian literature, right? Yes, Nisha says essentially contested concept. Very true. Now you have got it. And what is interliterariness?
Exchanges between two literatures.
Exchanges and relations.
Yes, relations.
So
It may be
if you
similarities, differences, relations.
correct. And if you go back to Shishir Kumar Das essay, then he is saying that you cannot think of Indian literature as sum total of all literatures. यानी एक लाइब्रेरी भर के गुजराती लिटरेचर की किताब प्लस दूसरे में सिंधी, तीसरे में हिंदी, चौथे में बंगाली, थर्ड में तमिल, ऐसी सब you cannot lump all this together and say this is Indian literature, because that is not a very significant category, right? So then what is Indian literature according to Shishir Kumar Das? According to Amiya Dev, it's an interliterary condition, right? Joshi? Interliterary condition.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Then what, according to Shishir Kumar Das, is Indian literature?
Sir, I don't remember.
Anyone remembers? इसको याद है? How does Shishir Kumar Das conceptualize Indian literature? Literature belonging to people of India, okay. But he has spelled it out more clearly somewhere. All literature is
complexity of literary relations.
Complexity of literary relations. Does he use that term?
Sir, I'm just reading out of the essay here.
So does it say complexity?
Complex of literary relations.
Okay, so what is difference between complex and complexity?
So complexity, no sir, no. Complexity means a state, and while complex is an entity.
Okay. Right. So what do you mean by complex as an entity? Very good. You are absolutely right.
So the complex means a mixture or a solution. It is not very. It is not easy to unravel. It is very tangled up.
Entangled, right? Complex is something that is not simple, but it is tied up to multiple things. It is determined by multiple things. It's not a single determinant. उसमें कोई single determinant है नहीं, but there are multiple determinants to something. Then it is called complex, right? And the term comes from science. So what does he mean by complex of a relationship? Can you explain that?
Sir, as you mentioned as well, that we cannot lump every kind of literature together and say it is an Indian literature.
Correct.
But uh, we have to. Shishir Kumar says we have to study it as a complex.
Means कैसे study करोगे आप? When you study it as a complex, you are right. Not as an entity, but as a complex. Then, yeah. Anyone else wants to come in? Dehini, you can add. What do you mean by study literature in relation to other literatures?
I mean, this can be a little similar to interliterariness that we talked about in.
Exactly. Exactly, it is. Right? Because interliterariness is a name used to define, describe those relations whose complex, who you are studying as a complex rather than as an entity. Right? Determined multiple. It is. It has got many strands and many determinants rather than single one. So there is something similar that both of them are saying. Right? Which means if you want to study Gujarati literature as Indian literature, then how will you study it? Or Hindi literature as Indian literature? Preeti, what do you mean when you say Gujarati literature as is Indian literature? Using ideas of Shishir Kumar Das and Amiya Dev. Can you attempt to explain? Anyone would like to do that? Yeah, Dev, go ahead.
So maybe we can say that Gujarati literature is Indian literature because it has been shaped, influenced, or it has always been in relationship with the other literatures produced in India. And so you can see this interliterariness between different
Exactly.
literatures, and that is why when you see this connection between various literatures, all of these literatures become a part of Indian literature.
Right. Because of similar interliterary relations, right? And complex of relations. So what are those? Can you name some of them, Dehini? You are absolutely right. You can call Gujarati literature as Indian literature because of certain interliterary relations and literary complexes of relations, right? So which are those? Can you name one or two?
So like last time we talked how Gujarati literature has produced so many ghazals, but you will also see
Right.
in Urdu literature or things
Exactly.
like that.
Even in Bangla, even in Marathi, even in Tamil, even in Punjabi, you will have ghazals, right? So there is an interliterary relationship, which is kind of shared histories of cultures, right? So history of ghazal in India is interliterary history. So what connects Punjabi with Gujarati and Marathi is this kind of shared histories, because there are ghazals in Punjabi and ghazals in Gujarati and ghazals in Tamil and ghazals in Bangla as well. Right? Yes, no. That is the similarity that we are talking about. So when Preeti is saying it is about part whole, can you talk about, can you explain it a bit? How is Gujarati literature a part of a whole called Indian literature? We cannot analyze it in isolation, right? Why? You are absolutely right. Preeti, you are absolutely right. But I am saying why you can't analyze Gujarati literature in isolation from other literatures. Context keep changing. वो तो सभी जगह पे होंगे ना. Context will keep on changing with period. But the point that you have made is that we cannot analyze it in isolation, and Gujarati experiences were influenced by other cultural or historical events and vice versa. So why can't we analyze it in isolation?
Because, sir, I think that Gujarati literature itself cannot exist in, in separation or in isolation. So if we want to study Gujarati literature, we must study other literature as well.
Very good. Example can be?
Example can be, sir, some borrowed words from other languages.
Okay.
And
borrowed words, correct.
Or,
what else?
some literary traditions like ghazals.
Right, which we have been discussing. Any other example apart from ghazal?
Other examples may maybe like Bhakti movement, which happened.
Correct. So say something about Gujarati Bhakti movement, if you know something.
I think Mirabai wrote in Gujarati as well as in some of the Rajasthani languages. I'm not sure about it.
Right. And
Then,
as correct, very correct.
yes, sir.
You are right, absolutely right. And as Preeti is saying, literature in society and community themselves don't exist in isolation. So Mirabai, continuing the example that Rushi has given, came from Braj, Mathura, and lived in Dwarka, Gujarat. Right? She is from Rajasthan goes to Mathura and comes to Dwarka. These are all centers of Krishna Bhakti, right? And wherever she went, she composed in the languages that she picked up on her way, right? And she also brought Braj language in a big way in Dwarka, which is center of Gujarat, Gujarati Vaishnava Bhakti, right? Are you aware of Dwarka? Does anyone know something about Dwarka?
Yes, sir. Suvarna
What do you
Nagari
know?
Dwarka.
Right. But where is it and what is it?
Sir, it people, I mean, they believe that that's where Sri Krishna established his kingdom.
But where is it? You are right.
In Saurashtra, there is an island called Dwarka. I mean,
Correct.
between.
Correct. So it's a holy place for devotees of Krishna,
Yes, sir.
right? So you can see that you cannot study Gujarati literature in isolation from Braj or Rajasthani, right?
Yes, sir.
Or in case of Ghazal, you cannot say study it separately from Farsi and Urdu. But all of you are forgetting English. All Indian literatures engaged with English literature on a massive scale, right? And they tried their hands to replicate some of these things in 19th century. So most of the intellectuals and writers in Gujarati, Marathi, Tamil, Bangla after 19th century started using English forms like short stories, novels, and literary essays, and so on and so forth, in their own way. So that is also that's why you will find that there are short stories, novels, and literary essays and travelogues in Punjabi, in Urdu, in Bangla, in Kannada, in Marathi, and in Gujarati. So you find common forms. Yes. So this is the commonalities, shared histories that connect one literature to another in India. So both Shishir Kumar Das and Mia Dev are focusing on these shared histories called interliterary histories, right? Which is a distinctive feature of Indian literature. So Indian literature is not an entity or object, but a kind of interliterary history, right? Which is shared by multiplicity of languages. For example, Bangla, Punjabi, Gujarati, Tamil, Gujarati, Hindi, so-called Hindi, Marathi are all languages that have come down from Indo-European languages. Something that we discussed in our comparative literature class in our discussion on philology. Does anyone remember this last week? How comparative philology is one of the disciplines from where we get comparative methodology. किसको याद आ रहा है सैटरडे का डिस्कशन?
Yes, sir.
Only Dehini.
Yes, sir.
Others don't remember.
Sir, I remember as well.
Right. So comparative philology talks about common ancestry of all these modern Indo-European languages, right? So that is interliterary history. So comparative literature very often focuses on these things, and that's why study of Indian literature becomes invariably comparative literature. Is that clear? Because what makes Indian literature Indian is this interliterary relations. or a complex of literary relations that Shishir Kumar Das is talking about. Right? So you cannot talk of it in complete diversity. ऐसा भी नहीं है कि पंजाबी लिटरेचर और गुजराती लिटरेचर में कोई कॉमनैलिटी ही नहीं है. दोनों में भक्ति है, दोनों में नॉवेल्स है, दोनों में शॉर्ट स्टोरीज है, दोनों में रामायण महाभारत की कहानियां हैं, राइट. दोनों में कास्ट सिस्टम से उठने वाले प्रॉब्लम्स है, जेंडर के प्रॉब्लम्स है. सो यू कैन सी दैट it is not the fact that they are completely disconnected from each other either. So Tamil and Punjabi may be very different historically, but at the same time they share certain histories called interliterary histories, right, which makes them Indian. So that's the definition of Indianness, which is given through comparative frameworks here. Any questions about this discussion that we had just now? Anything that you have to say? You have understood, not understood? जो लोग
Sir,
सो
I
गए.
think we summed up the two essays, I mean, well, summarized it well in this
Right.
discussion.
Right. So anyone has any difficulties? Yes, no? कितने लोगों को डिफिकल्टी है?
No, sir.
नहीं है, हाथ ऊपर करो. जिनको डिफिकल्टी नहीं है अब कोई इन दो एसेज में. Raise your hands. Only 2 people have no difficulties. बाकी सब okay. 4, 5, 6, 7. So out of 18, 7 people have no difficulties. But what about other 11 people? Okay, one more. What about other 10 people? Okay, what about other 8 people? बाकी 8 लोगों को डिफिकल्टी है या नहीं है? प्रीति, any difficulty? Komal? Okay. Fine. So whenever you have them, Cecil, then bring them up. And Komal, whenever you are able to articulate your difficulty, you can bring them up, right, Komal? It's possible that right now you are not able to come up with exact words and ideas to explain these difficulties, right? But whenever you do, you can bring that to class. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Komal and Cecil.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's go over to the next presentation. And who is going to do that?
Sir, I and Naya are going to present.
Fine, fine. Go ahead.
Sir, could you please make Naya the presenter? Like she's gonna present the PPT.
And where is make a presenter? And should I make you presenter too? Says
No, sir. No,
Not
sir.
needed?
Yeah.
Fine. Then I have made her. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, Naya, you can start presenting.
Hello.
Yeah, you have to be a bit louder.
Okay, am I audible now?
You have to be a bit louder.
Okay, okay. Is it visible now?
Not yet.
Now is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, Sejal and I are going to present the essay Comparative Literature in India, an overview of its history by Subha Chakrabarti Das Gupta. So this essay gives an outline of the path or the course of comparative literature in India. I would like to begin with a brief introduction of the author. So Subha Chakrabarti Das Gupta is a visiting professor in the Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies at University of Delhi. She was previously a professor at the Department of Comparative Literature at Jadavpur University and was the coordinator of the Special Assistance Program of the department for several years, where she undertook many projects in comparative literature and translation. She was also the editor of Jadavpur Journal of Comparative Literature from 2007 to 2012 and also taught at Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. She was secretary of Comparative Literature Association of India for 2 terms and was also a part of a research team on mapping multilingualism in world literature of the International Comparative Literature Association. So some of her major works include books such as A Bibliography of Reception, World Literature in Bengali Periodicals, and many edited volumes such as Literary Studies in India, Genealogy, and Of Asian Lands, an annotated bibliography of travelogues to Asian countries in Bangla. This is the synopsis of the essay. So basically, it gives an overview of the course of comparative literature in India, with major emphasis on the department at Jadavpur University, where it began, and to some extent on the Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies in the University of Delhi. So the Jadavpur University has been given prominence throughout the essay. The department at Jadavpur began with the legacy of Rabindranath Tagore's speech on world literature and with a modern poet translator as its founder. So it was quite evident that there were certain efforts towards kind of a decolonizing process, and there was an attempt to enhance and promote creativity. So gradually, Indian literature began to receiving focus along with literature from the southern part of the world. Now, this is an important line which is given in the essay. That is, paradigms or patterns of approaches in comparative literary studies shifted from influence and analogy studies to cross-cultural literary relations to the focus on reception and transformation. So I would like to just describe these terms. So basically, comparative literary studies or cross-cultural studies deal with works or writers associated with more than one culture. And the focus was shifted from analogy studies and influence studies. So basically, analogy studies mark parallels between writers and texts, whereas influence studies examine how one literature is influenced by the other. So the focus was shifted to the cross-cultural literary relations. So basically, it deals with relations between literature of different regions embodying different cultures. So last week, there was a discussion in the class regarding the exchange of communication. So it further gives rise to cross-cultural communication, which is how people.
You will have to, as Saisal says, you will have to Sohan says that you may have to change your slides as you move along.
Yeah, I'm
Yes, sir.
doing
Many
it.
of the slides are not changing. Could you please look into it?
It's not changing?
No,
Okay,
it's
just
not.
one second. I'll just okay, was this visible? The introduction about Subha Chakrabarti Dasgupta?
No, you just now it's visible. Now when you
Okay, so is it fine if I do it like this without the slideshow?
fine, will do.
Okay. So yes, I was at cross-cultural literary relations. So basically, cross-cultural literary relations deal with relations between literature of different regions embodying different cultures. So last week, there was a discussion in the class regarding the exchange of communication. So it further gives rise to cross-cultural communication, which is how people of differing cultural backgrounds communicate. So the focus shifted to reception studies. So reception studies basically aim at measuring the response to a writer's works abroad. But it is important to remember that these all are the aspects of comparative literature. The analogy studies, influence, and reception studies, these all are the aspects of comparative literature. So in the recent years, comparative literature has taken into consideration new perspectives by engaging with different areas of culture and knowledge, especially related to marginalized spaces. So along with that, the focus has also been on recovering new areas of non-hierarchical literary relations, which we'll see in the essay. So these are the pictures of Jadavpur University and Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies at University of Delhi, which have evidently acquired prominence in the essay. So we move to the first section of the essay, the beginnings. Comparative literature in India began in the department at Jadavpur University, which started functioning in 1956, and later had a new beginning in its engagement with Indian literature at the Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies in the University of Delhi. So, however, before the establishment of comparative literature in India, there were texts that basically focused on comparative aspects in India, but from the point of view of relation with texts from other part of the world. For example, Persian, Arabic, and English literature. And along with that, from the perspectives of literatures written in different languages. So at the National Council of Education in 1907, Rabindranath Tagore's discussion was called as Vishwa Sahitya, which when translated in English is known as world literature, was provided to the establishment of Department of Comparative Literature, Jadavpur University in 1956. So Tagore used the word Vishwa Sahitya and he termed it as comparative literature. So what Tagore meant by this term was the essential unity of human experience and therefore the unity of human creativity too. He also meant that the expression of human creativity is continuously evolving, which is fashioned by so many hands, spread in various parts of the world, and still it's the part of one narrative that is of the human race. So he also believed that we reveal ourselves in the literature more profoundly than in mundane activities of self-interest. Moreover, he also believed that it is only by giving ourselves to the others that we can know or express ourselves. So this idea of literature was connected to human relations and was also connected to human feelings. However, Buddhadev Bose, who was one of the prime architects of modern Bangla poetry, believed that it was necessary to involve in modernity and walk hand in hand with the present time, as he did not agree with Tagore's ideal vision of Vishwa Sahitya. But he cited from Vishwa Sahitya that to know literature of the world, it is necessary to establish connections. Well, Bose was quite well known for his translations. He has translated works of Baudelaire, Hölderlin, and Kalidas. In the preface of his translation of Baudelaire's Les Fleurs du Mal, or The Flowers of Evil, he wrote that he translated French because he wanted to move away from British literature. So as I earlier mentioned that there were subtle efforts towards the decolonizing process. This is one of its examples. He also translated Kalidas's Meghduttam, where in the introduction, he wrote that it is necessary to make ancient literature part of contemporary literature. So this evidently reveals that in the beginning, it was seen as a decolonizing process, and the major texts that were considered were Sanskrit texts. So the decolonizing process later on became the heart of comparative Indian literature. In spite of having forces to withdraw the colonial process, the colonial structure still had an impact, as it was quite visible in the educational methods. A large section of a course was given to Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Romantic, and the modern period. However, there were few other courses which were based on Sanskrit and Bengali literature. So in the initial stages, it involved in new aesthetics, new objectives like the Greek drama and the Indian Nataka. Later on, the discussion was to build a bridge, a kind of a reason between the social and historical structures. So in 1956, the first syllabus was offered by the Jadavpur University, which was quite challenging. The syllabus had sections which included Sanskrit literature, along with Greek and Latin literature, and then Bengali, its relation with Sanskrit literature and its general course, and then a large section of European literature from the ancient to the modern world. However, the core section of the syllabus included the comparisons between the Iliad and the Ramayana, and between Greek drama and Sanskrit drama, which took into consideration Aristotle's Poetics and Bharat's Natya Shastra. So similarities were highlighted, but the differences became center of discussion. Okay, so I could find parallels between a recommended text, which is a book named Indian Narratology, written by K. Ayyappa Panikar. So this book identifies 10 major models of narration with occasional comments on their possible impact on the Western narrators. So these models are the Vedic, the Puranic, the Itihas, the Shrinkhala, the Anyapdesh, the Mahakavya, the Dravidian, the folk tribal, and the Mishra. So it is evident that most of the models that are being selected are from Sanskrit literature, as it began with Vedic literature, then moved further to the epic and Puran literature, which had Itihas as a part. So then Mishra forms a part of the classical Sanskrit literature. So the point to be conveyed is that earlier, the only focus was on Sanskrit texts. We move to the next section, that is Indian literature as comparative literature. In 70s, new perspectives and ideas began to emerge in the educational methods of comparative literature in Jadavpur. So Indian literature entered the syllabus, which was an inescapable move, as comparative literature consists literature of all around the world. So making Indian literature a part of the syllabus was important, as the cultures shared history, but with differences. So as I earlier mentioned, that the differences were central to the discussion. In 1974, the Department of Modern Indian Languages started a post-MA course entitled Comparative Indian Literature. In 1977, MA course in Comparative Indian Literature began in the Department of Delhi University. So the focus on Indian literature in terms of comparative literature opened many areas of engagements. So when it came to Indian literature, the only focus was on Sanskrit texts, as I earlier mentioned. But in order to proceed with the course and the syllabus, it was important to look at the other texts of India written in different languages with, of course, with different history. So it was a major task for comparatists to deal with Indian literature from the perspective of comparative literature, and they had to look to both the elite and the marginalized. So it also meant to look at the interactions taking place in literature in various regions beyond the boundaries of the state. It goes without saying that all these processes were time consuming. So the initial process was seen in the comprehensive and integrative 3-volume histories of Indian literature, where Indian literature was studied not as separate units, but in dialogue with one another, which was brought out by Sisir Kumar Das, a faculty member at the Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies, along with the support from other members of the department and the Sahitya Academy. The author then talks about the centers of comparative literature studies. So the centers were established in southern India, in Trivandrum, Madurai Kamaraj University, Bharati Dasam University, Kottayam, and Pondicherry in the 70s and 80s. So along with that, a full-fledged comparative literary studies department was established in the School of Tamil Studies in Madurai Kamaraj University. There were there was a comparison of classical Tamil texts with Greek, Latin, and Japanese texts. So as I earlier highlighted that comparative Indian literature cannot only focus on Sanskrit literature. It must take into consideration literature of other parts of India too. Other prominent centers were established in the 80s and 90s, and these are the examples. Punjabi University, Patiala, Dibrugarh University, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Sambalpur University, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and SNDT Women's University, Mumbai. Then the author talks about, then the author talks about comparative poetics, which was an attempt to clear the relationship between literary theory and comparative literary studies. So it means the comparative studies of literary theories. So comparative poetics was the core area of comparative literature studies and dissertations or thesis, and was the central area of research by the Vishwanath Kaviraj Institute of Comparative Literature and Poetics in Odisha. So one of the prominent changes that happened was the fusion of the Indian Comparative Literature Association Jadavpur and Comparative Indian Literature Association Delhi. So they basically merged in 1972. I'm sorry, they merged in 1992. Now I request Sejal to explain the remaining part of the essay.
Naya, next slide, please.
Yeah, done.
So the next section of the essay talks about the reconfiguration arrangement of areas of comparison. So during the 80s, changes and arrangement of areas of comparison at Jadavpur University were seen. So there was a change in its syllabus where Gabriel Marquis' 100 Years of Solitude and texts from Latin America and Africa became parts of the syllabus. The main elements or components were related to the questions of unity, desire to understand the resistance, and the strategies to bring out the gaps in the history of different literatures and their cultures. So during 90s, area studies paper related to African, Latin American, Canadian literature, and Bangladesh literature were introduced. Moreover, cross-cultural relations, which means literary and culture studies, which deals with writers and their works, which are associated with more than one culture, were taken into consideration between Indian and European literature, which had been an area of focus right from the beginning. But later, the focus shifted to reception in books. For example, bibliography of reception of world literature in Bengali periodicals. Here, the reception studies pointed to historical realities, which determined the conditions of acceptability and the complex in the difficult structures between literature and history. For example, 1 minute. Yeah. For example, Romanticism could easily enter into the area of Bengali literature, but it did not accept many of the European elements. After taken this into consideration, an important question was raised, and the question was Shakespeare ever forced on Indian literature? So there were different responses to this particular question. However, Shishir Kumar Das, like other comparators, said that there were different Shakespeares, as he felt that the text written by Shakespeare might have been made compulsory in classrooms, but the playwright had a varied interpretation when it came to the world of theater. So there was a positive impact on the Parsi theater, where the theater was restored by the performance of comedies written by Shakespeare. There was a noticeable shift as the focus was shifted from reception studies to cross-cultural reception, and the major focus of study was switch and exchange among cultures. In the late 80s, there was a need of more structured and proper approach. Under Amiya Dev's guidance, a master's syllabus was designed which contained genres, literary historiography, which is literary history, and themes. Along with that, another main area of focus was the studies of elements of ancient and medieval literature in modern text. For example, when one studies Vedic, Buddhist, Upanishadic, and Jain elements in modern text while considering the speeches and conversations by Buddha, Mahavir, and Nanak, so they were kind of related, and they were, as previously explained, that the focus was more on the differences rather than the similarities. Another area of importance were the courses of cross-cultural transactions being taken up. For example, Kim by Rudyard Kipling and Gora by Rabindranath Tagore. Next slide. The next section of the essay talks about the research directions. During the late 90s and early 20s, the comparative literature, the research of comparative literature expanded in various parts of the country. Out of these projects, many translations and books emerged. Single literary departments were allowed to pursue studies and comparative perspective. For example, the examples of these departments are the English Department of Calcutta University achieved assistance to pursue research on literary relations between Europe and Indian 19th century. Second, the Department of English and Comparative Literary Studies at Saurashtra University, Rajkot. It took the theme of Renaissance and translated some Indian authors in English. The Department of Assamese Dibrugarh University, it published books related to translation and documentation of the folk forms. Lastly, the Department of Comparative Literature, Jadavpur University, received assistance to consider research in 4 major areas, which were East-West literary relations, Indian literature, third world literature, and translational studies. In the later section, the support was provided in publishing book when in research area and for preparing a curriculum for the study on Indian literature. This thing led to the publication of various texts, 3 texts on genres, themes, and literary history, which was based on India. People began conceiving different periods and different phases in a way or the other, which led them to see things with different point of views and help them figure out how some concepts can be revisited. There was a special assistant program which was introduced in the department at Jadavpur University. Under it, the department conducted 8 interliterary translation workshops, and the workshop focused on how to translate one Indian language to another without using English as a medium. This was an uncommon process at that time, and we can say that these 8 workshops might have opened up new challenges for those who were into translation. However, there is no particular example given of this of any text in the essay, and I do not know that. In 2005, the department at Jadavpur University was upgraded under the program to the status of Center of Advanced Studies. The research in comparative literature took a complete new turn. It was a twist. There was an urgency to make the society understand the importance of studying literature as the hype was of science and other areas. The main task was to present the Department of Humanities. The main task was to present that departments of humanities were looking into and working with a system to demonstrate literature as a knowledge system. Next slide. Also, in 2005, there was an urgency to make society, in 2005, the emphasis was also on oral text and on research on methods of engaging with such texts. As far as I understand what oral texts are, they are like speeches and seminars. Correct me if I'm wrong over here. Along with the general public, it became necessary to convince the decision makers who would then fund for higher education. A series of workshops were conducted with scholars from philosophy, history, science, and social sciences to look into areas of creativity and knowledge and to gain understanding of the ways of knowing. So it must be mentioned at this point that in late 90s and in the early 20s, there was a demand for engaging with literatures of marginalized communities. 2 major conferences were held by the National Association. A particular project was picked up in this by the department at Jadavpur, which was called Vanishing Seeds of Culture, and that was based on a study of Bankura district of West Bengal. Dalit literature was taken up in courses in some parts of the country. However, a lot more strategies are yet to be planned and concerned with educational methods when it comes to the literature. The second area in the Center for Advanced Studies was the interface between literatures of India and its neighboring countries. Next slide. This section talks about interface with translational studies and cultural studies. So in 21st century, comparative literature joined hands with two other fields, which they were translational studies and cultural studies. Translation practices brought students to engage deeply with other languages and other cultures, which led to insights into the nature of comparative concern. The Hyderabad University was a complete center for comparative literature in the area of translation. Along with that, the Department of Comparative Literature at Jadavpur, as of now, has a center for the translation of Indian literatures. As far as culture studies are concerned, literature has relation with different arts, different cultures. Culture studies may also be a main component in different kinds of interdisciplinary courses within the discipline. For example, the example which Amiya Dev had, sorry, which the Subhadas Gupta has given is a course in Delhi University, takes up the theme of city and village in Indian literature, which goes into representations of human habitat system and ecology, and then further it takes the concepts of various settlements. Next slide. To conclude with this section, as the non-hierarchical connectivity. So to conclude, as we are studying comparative literature as a part of our master's program, it is seen that this subject has different goals and visions in different countries as per the cultural and historical needs and requirements. As far as the field of humanities is concerned, the discipline, the area of comparative literature is engaged with issues that will lead to the improvement of civilizational justice against the forces which constantly reduce the potential of the humans. So that's what we understood from the essay, and we are done over here. Thank you.
So queries, doubts, questions, observations. What comes to your mind after listening to this presentation?
Sir, can I ask one question? Like
Yes,
while we both have that while we were preparing for this. So on page 13 of this essay, there is this line which says that T.S. Satyanath developed the theory of scriptocentric, body-centric, and phonocentric study of text in the medieval period, leading a number of researchers in the department to look for continuities and interventions in the tradition that would again lead to the pluralist epistemologies in the study of Indian literature and culture. So we did not understand this thing, and that's why we did not include it in our presentation. So could you please explain this? Like, I did not understand this cryptocentric and body-centric thing. What is it about?
Yes. Can anyone comment on this? You may be wrong, or anyone wants to try what it is, speculate, try to figure out what this is.
Sir, I'd like to speculate.
Yeah.
Cryptocentric may mean first of all, crypt. The meaning of it is like something of a mystery kind, cryptic, right? So
No, it's cryptocentric. Crypto, not crypto. Cryptocentric.
so sir, I don't know then.
Yeah. Anyone else? Presenters, what did you think of it? Kya tha? Though you did not understand, what did you think it was?
I personally did not understand anything from this particular thing. Also, I looked up for this on internet, but I did not find anything relevant.
Okay. Anyone? Class going on. Can you come after 5 minutes? I will wind it up and then we'll meet. Yeah. Anyone speculating on this? Yes, Nisha.
Sir, from what I understood from this statement is Satyanath developed this theory where he wanted us to focus on the script that was written in a text, and then the body of the text, that is how the format and all that, and then phonocentric could be related to phonemes. So from these words, this is what I can understand from these words, but I'm not quite clear about it.
Okay, what it means is that if you look at the idea of literature in India, right, then they are not compatible or equivalent. It's in the sense that pre-colonial Indian literature is largely oral. There it's performed, and that is why I think even Cecil had somebody made a mistake about oral does not mean conference. Oral means those texts which are handed down from generation to generation, but mostly as a performance, as a song, which is remembered, rather than something that is printed or written. So most of the compositions in Bhakti, like Kabir or Meera or Narsi Mehta, all these texts are preserved orally by those communities and transmitted, right, as bhajans or as kirtans or whatever. So it is a mode of transmission that is common in India, which is not print centric. It is performance and oral centric. Right. So if you look at Indian traditions, then it is not like Shakespeare ka text hai. It's printed and it circulates in printing and readers study it in printing. But it's something like orally preserved by the community. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So Vaishnava Janato Tene Kahiye by Narsi Mehta is not written down. It's composed, and his followers probably would have remembered it, who passed it on to the audience, and from audience it passed on to people, and from one generation to another generation. That's how it transmitted across time and space. Unlike Shakespeare, who was transmitted across time and space in print form. Right, there were 100 copies of his plays which were circulated, and then they were reproduced in printing. I hope you get these two modes of transmissions of texts. So a lot of pre-colonial Indian literature consists of orally performed texts which are passed down by one generation to other. Very often each performer would add something to it or change something to it, right? That is also possible. So that is the mode in which Indian literatures were transmitted, lot of it. And the other was through writing practice. So manuscripts were written, which were copied by the scribes, right? And they were often read out in front of audience in a temple or in a place where all villagers would get together, right? So this is another mode of transmission of Indian text, because we are talking of a culture which did not have printing as its primary mode of transmission and study. So then how will you study these kind of texts which are not primarily print? How will you do that? Then you will have to take on board the practice of writing manuscripts. This is a script-centric approach. Then performance is very often how the singer dances or sings to the composition. And the third is phonocentric, or regarding the sound, the musicality of those texts. So this approach, according to Satyanath, would be used for developing pluralistic epistemologies or plural categories of studies. For example, lot of Jain literature in Gujarati is transmitted in writing, right? Lot of Bhakti literature in Gujarati is transmitted through orality and performance before British came to India, right? Now this will be very different in Maharashtra, say for example, where Jain tradition is weak, but most of it is oral composition. So the oral performative and musical dimension of literature has also to be taken on board while you study. That is what is emphasizing. So it is not related to currency, or it is not related to conferences. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Kind of.
Yeah.
Because suppose Ramcharitmanas, have you heard of this text
Yes, sir.
by Tulsidas? In which language is it composed? Anyone knows?
Sir Avdi.
Avdi, right? But it is written down, but it is performed at various religious occasions, right? So it is not just written text, and you may want, if you want to read it, then you may go to Amazon and buy a copy which is printed. But that is not how historically it has been transmitted. It is more or less contemporary of Shakespeare. So there are manuscripts which are written down, but most of it is in the form of performance and commentary. Yes, Sundar Kand is a very important episode in Ramcharitmanas, and there are saptas for Sundar Kand commentaries in Indian language. So a particular person would come and comment on the Sundar Kand episode, read out some portions, and people would listen to it, right? Unlike Fairy Queenie, which is more or less contemporary of Tulsidas Ramayana, which was printed and it circulated among people who were literates, and they would read it in isolation of their bedrooms. But Tulsi Ramayana was a community affair. A group of people would come down and listen to the performer who would be narrating the story of Ram, following Tulsidas' composition. So you can see it's a different mode of transmission of textuality in India as in the West. Now, when you take all these performative musical dimensions on board, when you take the whole practice of reading the script on board, then you have a very different approach to study of literature, which is different from print-centric approach, which you are exposed to, right? आपके लिए लिटरेचर क्या है, तो प्रिंटिंग में जो मिलता है वो लिटरेचर है क्लासरूम में, और आप पढ़ते हो, आप नॉवेल लेते हो बाजार से, तो इट्स अ प्रिंटेड ऑब्जेक्ट दैट यू स्टडी एंड read it in your bedroom or at home. Now that is one practice of reading. But Indian texts followed a very different trajectory of transmission and circulation, which makes them different from the Western traditions of textual transmission and circulation. So we have to take that on board in order to study Indian literary history. Does that help you further?
It sort of does, sir.
And say, for example, Punjabi, then it would have a very strong Sufi influence, Punjabi literature, while Gujarati would have very strong Jain influence. Right, so there is a variety, there is a difference between Gujarati and Punjabi religious literature before colonialism. Right, so it's not the same. So that is what he means by pluralistic epistemologies, because Sufi traditions of Bule Shah or Amir Khusro or Jaisi, Muhammad Jaisi, who wrote Padmavat, Have you heard of this text, Padmavat? On which film was made recently, which ran into controversy? Have you seen that film, Padmavat? How many of you have seen that film? Only one person has seen. Right, so it's based on this Sufi epic, Sufi Premakhyan. That's the name of the tradition, Premakhyan tradition, Sufi Premakhyan tradition. Right, and that has influenced Hindi literature substantially. So what Satyanath is saying, that we need various kinds of concepts to analyze these kind of texts, and by concepts we mean epistemologies, which are different. Punjabi के लिए different है, Hindi के लिए different है, Gujarati के लिए different है, Marathi के लिए different है. Right? That's what he means. So you preserve plurality, but you have to take oral, performative, and different kind of tradition from the Western ones on board. यानी आप कबीर पढ़ते हो, for example, right? Then Kabir is not meant to be read in a print version primarily. It's a kind of singing tradition, performing tradition that has traveled across Indian subcontinent. You have Kabir singing in Gujarati as well, and his influence is seen in Gujarati Bhakti poetry as well, because Kabir is such an important presence. All right. So we have to take this performative singing, writing tradition, which is very different from the Western one, on board, is one of the important conceptual moves that are required for study of Indian literary history. Hope that was useful. Any other question before we stop? Okay, so what we are going to do is we'll stop for today. Tomorrow, all of you should read this essay and come up with whatever queries or difficulties you have, and we'll have a discussion on this essay. Is that clear? If you're not going to read, don't come to the class. If you have not read 3 of the essays, तीनों 3 पढ़ के आ जाओ, नहीं तो आओ ही मत. There are better ways to use the data that you are buying. More interesting things on OTT or in your group happening. So if you come to the class tomorrow, come having read all the 3 essays, primarily this one and the difficulties that you found in this. Is that okay?